At long last, I feel like this has been a wee long time coming for us. It would unfortunately be rude not to talk about last night. We did just discuss it there. There's a good few reasons that I like to keep a wee eye on Queen's Park. Regular or long time viewers will know that I used to ball boy at Queen's Park. Didn't last very long though, about 6 months, and then I was gutted when COVID happened, because then I had to swap Queen's Park for semi-finals and finals and Scotland games and that, which was a disgrace really. I still managed to come along to Firhill and Stenhousemuir and that a couple of times. As I said, my pal, who I've not spoke to since last night, a big Queen's Park fan, and ultimately I wanted you in a good mood this morning.
Aye.
He said he said you were certainly disappointed, and it's the most disappointed you've been. Has maybe sleeping on it, has that changed, or are you still just, or is it a new day, new dawn? What's your sort of mindset after coming in after a result?
Listen, players are back in tomorrow. I still need to think about what happened last night. Do you know what I mean? It's still quite raw, but I wouldn't change my answer in terms of being disappointed. But we'll come in tomorrow and we'll kind of review things, and then we need to try and fix it, because at the end of the day we've got a big game on Saturday again, the last of the quarter. So, and then we can look at a wee review back on our quarter and see where we go for there.
I do want to also apologise that I'm absolutely soaked to the bone here. It's not the nicest of days here on the south side of Glasgow. But we had also said there that, and it's something that the supporters mirror, is that the performances are there. You're maybe just looking for the goals, maybe from more around the pitch, because ultimately Josh Fowler's having the season of his life at the moment, isn't he? And then when those goals come, the wins are going to come. Is that satisfying though, to see that even if there's been a lot of draws, there's been a couple of losses like last night, like as well heartbreakingly at the weekend against surely the odds-on favourite to win the league, that you can see a plan in place, that you can see your plan is working, and that everyone else I think can see it?
Listen, I've been absolutely delighted with how things have been going. I think we've had a couple of games where we should have had wins for different reasons, but unfortunately we didn't. We obviously had a few draws, and then I think the St Johnstone game, it's probably the best I've seen us in the first half, in terms of everything, that kind of full package, pressing, how we played, the game plan, everything kind of went to plan. But I think, listen, I've got a young team. There's going to be inconsistencies. Do you know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing for us as a group, to try and get that right. But I think for me, I've been absolutely over the moon with how things have went so far. But we've also got to realise, and I said this to the group last night, if you think back to the goal last night, I think back to the St Johnstone sitting there at the weekend, that's the level we're at. You can't switch off. Do you know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing in this league. You need to concentrate for the full 90 minutes. So it's something that we need to get better at. But as I said, I've been really happy with the group, and I think their endeavour and their work rate, and I think that's, everybody can see that, and I think the plan that we've obviously put in place has been working. So we just need to, it's all building blocks now. But as I said to you earlier, I think from my point of view, we'll get the first game, the first kind of quarter done, review it. Is there things that we need to tweak? Again, on the road we've been really good. At home, not so good. So we maybe need to tweak things, etc. So, but I did say when I came in I wanted to make Lesser Hand in a fortress, and unfortunately we've not managed to do that right now. But I know that it'll turn, and we'll find ways to make it turn. So, but no, listen, I have been really happy.
Well, we speak about being at home in the building blocks. Ultimately, you were promoted. Let's say you weren't externally hired. There's a number of still key core players from like last season and the season before. Ultimately, I'd imagine you know all the faces around the club. There's a good number of youth players that you've brought in that I imagine you've worked with at some point. Does that allow you just to focus on being the coach in your new role, being the manager in your new role, as opposed to having to adapt to the surroundings, adapt to a new set of fans, this building, this brilliant facility that you've got? Has that just allowed you to laser focus, do you think?
I think, listen, I'm anybody that knows me, I'm a very focused character. Do you know what I mean? I'm very organised.
You were in at 7 this morning, as you say, on your off day.
Listen, I don't. For me, you get what you get out of football management. You get out what you get out of life. I think you've got to put everything into it. And as I said, anybody that knows me, I'm certainly that character. So, I think if I look at the dynamics of the team, do you know what I mean? We have got a very young team, but that's what this club's all about, and I said that when I got the job. That's what they've always been about, is playing youth players. Like last night we had 5 academy players on the pitch last night, so again, there's not many teams in the country that will do that, but that's what we've got, and that's what, again, for me, we know the situation the club's in, and at the end of the day, that's out with my hands. That's something that, but I did say this, at the end of the day, that's what we've got, and young players, I want to see young players playing, because what they've also got is that they're fearless. Do you know what I mean? And I think, for me, you've got to have that wee bit of element in that as well. It's something I've obviously done throughout my coaching career, is worked with youth players, but blending it with the experience, like I spoke about when I came in the summer, was the most important thing for me. So, and I think we've managed to do that, and they're certainly helping the cause. But the young ones, it's just inconsistency, and it's just making sure that we continue to drip feed them in and make sure they're doing the right things. I think recently you've seen a few that have obviously been starting the games and stuff, and they've done really well. But again, I've got to make decisions that are going to be right for everybody, and I think, for me, that the Queen's Park's always been a kind of, can we help young players, even though, as you mentioned, Josh is kind of hitting it, he's still young, he's still a young player, do you know what I mean? We're still developing young players, so that's obviously my role and the staff's role to continue that. So no, I think for me it's all about keeping that level and making sure that we're competing every week, which we have been, which was so important.
We'll come back to current affairs in a wee while, but we'll just kick this off in classic James English style. Take us back to the start before all this coaching nonsense and your playing career. Even take us up to probably your upbringing, your football upbringing, and up to your alright first deal that you had as a player.
No, listen, football was my life. Do you know what I mean? Always has been. I was always that boy with the ball at the park, and listen, I never got to a level that I wanted to get to. Do you know what I mean? It certainly wasn't through hard work, but I'll admit that I just wasn't as good as others. But I knew what my attributes were, and as I said, I wouldn't hide away from that. I think, but I knew my path was always going to be in the coaching. I always knew that it was something that I was really passionate about, and then it was just getting the opportunity when you get it. I've managed to be reasonably successful in terms of the youth game, but now it's the big boy stuff. It's stepping up. So I think from my point of view, listen, I made kind of near enough 600 appearances in my career, and I'm very proud of that. No matter what the level is, to make that amount of appearances, I'm very proud of what I achieved. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, I've had through kind of a couple of promotions, couple of league wins, etc. And there's no better feeling, but the path was always to go down this route, and I always felt my coaching side always helped me as a player as well, and as much as my playing side helped me as a coach. So, but listen, I came from a working class background in Greenock. Do you know what I mean? That's so again, I knew what I had, and it was a really nice place to grow up, and it really grounded me, and everybody, my family support and stuff like that were absolutely first class, and it's kind of made me the guy that I am now. And again, I'd probably say there's been a really good couple of influences in my life, and for me, I'll kind of them as well. Do you know what I mean? In terms of how grounded I am, and I never get too ahead of myself, and I'm very humble of what I've got. You mentioned it earlier about this fantastic facility. I mentioned it in my kind of interview when we done the stuff at Lockhinch. Very lucky in the position I'm in, and I don't think at the end of the day Queen's Park is the football club, and nobody in this building will be bigger, and that's the message that I've kind of portrayed. And I think you can definitely see for the work that we've been doing that there's no egos in the building. No. So that's the way that it will stay as long as I'm in charge. So, but no, listen, I've had a very, as I said, football life, and I don't really know anything else, if I'm being completely honest.
Fair enough. It's not a bad life to have, is it? But obviously you started off at St Mirren.
Yeah.
That was where you got your first academy sort of feel. Ultimately now you are a coach and you have had numerous experiences with the young players. You never made a competitive appearance for St Mirren, did you?
I'd literally been in a squad a couple of times, etc. But no, I've made an appearance in the, if you want to call it, the Renfrewshire Cup, which again was against a kind of junior side, etc. But that was my kind of competitive experience. I went to Inverness, kind of on first team duty. I was in the squad a couple of times, but ultimately I never managed to get what I kind of wanted for St Mirren, and to be fair, they did offer me a contract when I was younger and to kind of stay in the building, but I went out and loaned to Montrose, and do you know what, for me, people will say it was the wrong decision, but I thought it was the right decision because I ended up having to go and play men's football, and that's what I keep on saying to our young players. Sometimes you need to take steps back to go forward, and I certainly done that. But as I said, I never got to the kind of levels that I wanted to reach, but I'm not shy away from saying it. Do you know what I mean? That's at the end of the day, that's football, and but I want to make sure that I give it everything in terms of my management to try and see if I can go to a higher level, which I am right now. So
yeah, but then I find that interesting though. So obviously you say that ultimately you went and played men's football at Montrose, great club, and you didn't quite get what you wanted at St Mirren. But I suppose you would have had access to what would be now Premiership level facilities, or at least the kind of whatever the subjective relevant type. Do you think that side of it was good for you, or would you maybe have wished you had grown up at a club like Montrose? Is there a kind of healthy medium between that, do you think?
no, listen, St Mirren for a club for me coming through the youth system was brilliant. It was really grounding. Again, I get back to it, like it was tough, and the people who were in charge and the people who were round about they were on you. And but again, I've got nothing but respect for people who were in charge at the time and who was around that area, because they did ground you. Do you know what I mean? And again, I think our young players, they get it easy compared to what I got it. And again, even if you get back even further, probably they'll tell you it was even worse. Do you know what I mean? So the generations always do change. But no, I would say, listen, St Mirren were a Premier League club when I was there, and again, it was demanding and exactly what you needed for that kind of Premier League side of things. And as I said, I went out on loan, and when I went out on loan, I was playing men's football, and then I managed to get Scotland recognition, kind of getting called up for camps, etc. at that time at under 19s level. And the only reason I was getting that was because I was playing in a men's environment. So I wouldn't say there was any sort of regrets in terms of being at St Mirren kind of growing up. I think, as I said, it was a really good grounding. My coach David Longwell, and obviously you had Gus McPherson, Stuart Balmer, Andy Millen, all these people. They really made it a tough environment, but it was the way it needed to be. So, and it certainly made me grow up. And I think getting out and loan at Montrose again even made me grow up even more, because it is men's football, and everybody thinks, oh, you're going to third division, and it was a really, really good level. Do you know what I mean? You're playing against guys that have played at a high level. I was also playing with players that were playing at a really high level as well. So, and they're fighting for their bonus. They're fighting for that wee bit, and they're fighting for the football club. Do you know what I mean? And the passionate fans that all these clubs have got. So, no, I've got no regrets that way. I loved my kind of playing career, going down the levels to try and push up again, which, to be fair, I did manage to do.
Did you kind of move out east after that? Because, given that you went up and played at Elgin after that as well, had you kind of moved out there, or were you still kind of relatively central? Because there's a good number of guys that still...
Yeah.
There's like a radius in there of like how maybe far up the country you could play while still living in sort of Glasgow area, isn't there?
Well, I had... Obviously I went to Montrose, as I said, on loan, and then eventually I signed there, and I kind of made sure that, listen, I've always been a big one on, as I said, like hard work, and I made sure I was the fittest I could be at that level, because I always thought, right, I'm going backwards to try and get forward, so I take care of myself, do you know what I mean? And I always have, because again, I always wanted to make sure that I was in the best condition I could be for trying to push myself up a level. And I think, listen, I stayed in Greenock most of my life, do you know what I mean? And the travelling, but the travelling was good as well, because you get to see different parts of the country, and again, do you know what I mean? It kind of makes you grow up, because you're in a car with people, older people, kind of car schooling and stuff like that. It really does give you a grounding. And I think when I went to Elgin as well, obviously we had like a kind of minibus idea, and they were some of the best times of my life, if I'm being honest, they really were. Again, the guys that we had in the minivan, the big thing that my former manager, Ross Jack, wanted was that kind of Ouija mentality. And he was not shy in saying it, going up to obviously Elgin. And listen, I really enjoyed my time at Elgin as well. I really enjoyed my time at all these kind of clubs, Elgin, Montrose, Brecon, etc. Do you know what I mean? They're really good clubs, really good family clubs, really passionate supporters. And I kind of see Queen's Park that kind of way as well now. Do you know what I mean? I think it was something that I said that you want to kind of get that kind of family feel about it, and I do think that you can see that the fans are so passionate about the team and the club and its history. So it wasn't for me to kind of move up that way, etc. I was quite happy at home and doing the travelling.
I was going to ask if playing for all your kind of multiple clubs was fun, but we'll sort of put it on a bit of you had a good number of maybe like 1 year deals or 1 year stints at clubs, and spoken to a couple of other guys about this, and especially earlier on in their career, that's maybe not the most ideal thing. As much as it's good that you get to go to a lot of different environments, but especially in this sort of business that football is, especially in the lower leagues of Scottish football, where there's not very much business. That's maybe no the most settling or the most certain thing. Did you ever feel like that? When you were maybe moving on, club after a year, or were you actually just alright with doing that?
I think, listen, I had a couple of 2 year deals in different clubs, etc. But again, sometimes it doesn't work out. Do you know what I mean? And again, the big thing for me was I wanted to play. Do you know what I mean? I think back to my time at Livingston. Obviously, we had a successful year. I won the league, and then the year after I left, but I did have a year to stay. But again, conversations between myself and the staff was I wanted to play football, and they weren't guaranteeing that. So, and again, I've got I wouldn't say any grudges, that sense of things. At the end of the day, that's football, and that's what I've got to try and instill into my players as well. Do you know what I mean? That, like, most of them are on a year contract, but you've got to give it everything for that year. You've got to make sure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity, and I'll be completely honest, I thought I did. Do you know what I mean? I think any club I've been at, the one thing you'll get is you'll get 100% commitment. And listen, whether people look at your quality or look, but I was committed to every club I was at. Do you know what I mean? And that's, again, I get back to it, that's the type of person I am. It doesn't matter what it is. But I always had my coaching in the background, so I always, again, obviously I brought Jim in. Like, Jim was obviously my manager at Morton, and he seen the work I was putting in behind the scenes in terms of coaching as well. And I was 7 days a week. I was training in the morning, then I was going to work in the afternoon, and I mean, I was doing all the kind of work for active schools, and I done academy coaching with Morton at night. And I said, you don't get anywhere kind of in the position I'm in if you've not worked hard. Do you know what I mean? And certainly nobody, and if anybody was to turn around and say that I didn't work hard enough, then they would be lying. Because I certainly did do that. So and as I said, I'm very fortunate in the position I'm in now, but it's not through nothing but hard work. And I had to go and coach the tots, and I had to go and then coach teenagers and get into schools and all these things. But listen, it was always a passion. I always loved it. Do you know what I mean? And to see what I love is to see players improving or people improving. And I think I've been managed to do that, not bad. So long may that continue. But no, I wouldn't say the kind of 1 year deals thing spooked me. Listen, I just am a wee boy, and Mark's here. Actually shares a birthday with me, so it's quite a special moment. But in things I am now, it's, for me, it was always my job, but it's now him, and that he's my motivation, and obviously my missus and family, and that is my motivation now. And the only way that I'll make sure that I'm working as hard as I can, as you say, it's my day off, I'm in here, make sure that I'm doing things properly. But there is an extra motivation now. As much as my job is my motivation, he's my motivation as well now. So that kind of stint in my life is over. I'm looking for something a wee bit long term if I can get it.
I suppose that's just another person to coach, isn't it? That's
That's it.
More people you want to see improve.
That's it.
You did touch on Jim there. We'll get back to him currently here in a wee while, but I do want to ask you about that season at Morton, because you were there when you went up. Tam very much waxed lyrical about that season there when I asked him about it, just the whole kind of thrill of it, like towards the end of the year, and just how great Jim was as a manager. What was your sort of view on that season then?
Listen, to win a league at your hometown club, I kind of tell this story all the time when people ask me about Morton. I was actually there as a fan 10 years previous to that against the same team in the same division, and we managed to win the game. It was actually a Scott Bannerman goal that won the league, and again it was a very surreal moment. And then 10 years later, I'm in the same position. So it was really special, really special, and I've got nothing but good memories in my time at Morton. But listen, ultimately it didn't work out, and people, again, when I appointed Jim as my assistant manager, I think people look at it and go, but he released you. I don't hold grudges, that's football, that's the way it is, do you know what I mean? And again, what I loved about Jim, and it's something that he's obviously been since he's come in here, he's honest, and that's, for me, that's all you want as a player. There's no beating around the bush. He's very much, this is how it is, and that was just the way it is. I think for me, the kind of pressure of playing for your hometown club, do you know what I mean? It was I wouldn't say it was too much, but I think a lot of people, at the end of the day, I had to play a certain way for my manager, and if he wanted me to play a certain way, then I was going to do that. And if some people didn't like that, then tough. Do you know what I mean? We managed to win the league, and listen, I've, as I said, I've got nothing but fond memories, but it was a really tough year in terms of, do you know what I mean? You were a cup final every week. That pressure of being the big fish in the league, obviously ourselves and Dunfermline that year. But we managed to do it on the last day, and listen, it was helicopter Saturday. It was really thrilling, and all my family were there, and I think there was about 7,000-8,000 people inside Catwall that day. Do you know what I mean? And it was really passionate, and it was something that I'll never ever forget. But again, as I said, I don't hold grudges for after leaving, because that's football and that's it in a nutshell. And at the end of the day, I moved on and went to a club where I spent a lot of time. So, as I said, I've got no regrets that way.
There was 2 spells at Airdrie, wasn't there, after Morton? But then actually behind the scenes 2 different kind of Airdries, because you actually had sort of come in each time and there was the start of a new ownership regime. Was it 2 different, not 2 different clubs, but do you know, was there a different feel either? Do you know, there was Witherspoon who was in the first time, wasn't there, and then he had just come out the door as you had went in. Was there a different feel around either clubs? I know there was obviously different like financial issues with either and all that, or was it?
To an extent, I would say to an extent. I think when I first went in, it was Gary Boland was my manager, and he was brilliant. We were actually sitting reasonable in the league. I think we were sitting second when Gary left, and it was a surprise, a real surprise. But listen, sometimes owners they want something different, and again, we had to understand that as players. But we did a really good changing room that year. And then obviously we had different managers come in. We had Eddie Walecki Black, and then obviously had his issue with his stroke, and then we had Danny Lennon come in, and again it was, do you know what I mean, you need to adjust to different managers, etc. But we had a right good tight knit changing room, and listen, Airdrie fans, they liked me, do you know what I mean, and again it was because they saw my commitment to the cause, and for me, that's probably the best period in terms of over the 2 spells. The kind of, because again, when you spend so much time at a club, I really enjoyed it. So, and then the second time when I went in, again it was change, and then it was manager left, and then obviously Ian Murray came in, and again we had reasonable success. Do you know what I mean? We just missed out on the kind of going up and getting promotion through the playoffs, and I've made friends for life when I was at Airdrie, and again I've made when I get back to the staff at Airdrie and I get back to the people that worked at the club and stuff, they'll always remain friends, because as I said, I had nothing but fond memories at that football club, and even when I get back now, do you know what I mean, they're so welcoming, and as a player, as a person, do you know what I mean, there's nothing better than that. When you're welcome back to any football club you go, with kind of open arms, and they treat you very nice, and everybody says hello and how are you, and do you know what I mean? These things go a long way. As much as you think they're not as big, I do think for me that they definitely go a long way.
I'm certainly feeling it. I'm feeling very welcome here, Sean. So
no,
you guys are doing a good job so far. Anyway, as much as I've stood out there for ages, but anyway, so it was down on your Wikipedia page. I absolutely rinsed it the last week or so just to get every little detail out. It come up saying that you were the head of academy pathway at Morton.
Yes.
And I was going to ask if the coaching journey had started before that, but I suppose you've already answered that. What was that role like then? Was it a kind of less hands-on, more a officey one, or how was that?
No, it was actually more on the kind of pitch side. Derek Anderson was like a kind of director, if you want to call it that, because again it all changed. Like heads of youth became academy directors, etc. And the SFA put something in place where every club had to have a kind of head of youth pathway, etc. And Morton appointed me that. A role that I absolutely loved. Again, because what happened in that role was you go and you kind of help the coaches, because again, as much as I'm young, that kind of side of things, and obviously I was a lot younger back then, I had plenty of experience in the coaching side in terms of academy, but also out with, do you know what I mean, I'd done all my badges by the time I was 25, so again I had that kind of experience, and Derek Anderson kind of gave me a kind of, right, you go deal with that, and I loved that. Do you know what I mean? He obviously saw how organised and how kind of methodical I was with everything, and he was like, right, that's your role. And then ultimately, again, the club had to make cuts, and I was kind of backlash of that. Certain people again wanted to use kind of the money for something else, and that's again sometimes that's what happens at football clubs. And then from there, I obviously moved to Hamilton, and I've got nothing but amazing memories there as well.
Obviously later on in your career you would dip maybe between youth and first team roles. Do you feel then, and of course you're given like the sort of community stuff you were saying you were doing in Greenock, do you feel then that now even in this role that has rounded you out as a coach, if you get what I mean?
100%. I think, listen, as I said earlier, I've worked with toddlers, I've worked with teenagers, I've worked with men, I've worked with that kind of adolescent stage. I've seen it all, do you know what I mean? And again, I've been in school buildings. Obviously, I was at Holyrood, the performance school, working with the best players in the country, if you want to call it that, for the kind of teenage years, etc. So I have literally seen it all when it comes to coaching, and it's definitely grounded me for this role. And as I said, I would never get above my station. I'm always learning. And that's one thing. Even like Jim was saying to me, even for his point of view, he's learning at his age with all the things that we do, etc. And I think as a coach you're always learning, and I think if you think you're a finished article, it can quickly slap you back in the face. So listen, I don't have all the answers. I certainly have some, but I don't have all the answers. But there's a certain way that I want to work, and right now, apart from last night, I would probably say it's been pretty successful, or pretty reasonably successful so far. But no, I think it's definitely gave me the grounding that I've got now, and I'm, as I said, I feel very lucky to be in the position I'm in.
It's good to hear an old coach modernising the night, don't you? You don't see that a lot in today's game.
No, and that was one, as I said, Jim's been absolutely fantastic since he's come in, and everybody appreciates what his work is. Do you know what I mean? And I knew what I was getting. I mentioned it earlier. I knew what I was getting for Jim when he came in. And again, I get back to not just Jim, but the staff. Do you know what I mean? The staff are first class. Connor obviously does the kind of video side of things. Ross, our sports scientist, is absolutely amazing in his role, because again, we're a very fit team, and that is down to obviously all of us. Do you know what I mean? But Ross has got a real focus on injury prevention, and again, I get back to our new physio that's come in as well. He's been excellent. We have regular morning meetings, and everything runs smoothly. And then our goalkeeping coach Davy Scott's been absolutely brilliant. He's very hard working, and again, I've gave him the kind of role of looking at set plays and stuff like that, and he's been excellent. So as I said, I'm very lucky with the staff that I've got, and we're all working towards the same thing for Queen's Park. And as I said, that's nobody's got an ego in here to say that we're not trying to get this club to make sure it stays in the Championship next year.
You weren't the caretaker manager at Stenhousemuir for very long. I suppose that was your first sort of senior first team gig, if you like, at the top. As much as you've been there for very long, I can imagine that certainly toughened you up, actually, just having the keys to the castle even for, what was it, a month or so? Was that?
Do you know what? I was obviously club captain, and it was a natural fit for the club just to just to kind of say, right, we'll put you in, because they knew my kind of coaching background. Again, they knew I had the kind of respect to the dressing room, and the results never really worked out the kind of way that I wanted. The Forfar game, when I first got in charge, the stuff that I'd worked on the training pitch actually came into fruition the Saturday, but we made a couple of mistakes, and we lost the game, and I get back to it, mistakes are going to happen, but it was actually really good football. It was really good style, and what we looked at during the week, and I was actually reasonably happy, even though, as you say, you lose the game, so you can't be too happy. And then again, we got a game against Dumbarton cancelled, and then we had the Stirling game, and Stirling were obviously a very good side that year, but again, I saw a lot of stuff that I was really happy with. It didn't help that the fact that we had key members of the squad injured as well. Do you know what I mean? I was playing midfield players at centre back, etc. I was obviously injured myself at the time, but I did say that I wanted to fully concentrate on obviously being the coach at the time. But again, I wouldn't say it kind of stepped me up in a sense for like getting moving into this role. It was just a natural fit at the time. But again, a very good club. Loved my time at Stenhousemuir. Really good people at the club. And again, obviously when I'd left, Gary Naismith came in, and myself and Gary had a really good relationship, and again we had a good discussion that the dynamic probably wasn't going to work. So again, but listen, I've got nothing but respect for Gary, and again I'm sure he'd be saying the same thing to me, because we kind of came to a kind of mutual agreement that it was probably time to move on. But listen, any club I've been at, I've always enjoyed it, and Stenhousemuir was certainly one of them.
Was it Stenny recently actually? Because as I always go on about in this, my wee team, if you like, is East Fife, given my family connections. So my granny doesn't like the fact that I only really go through to see her when there's a game on or whatever. But I'm working every Saturday, so it's I go through there, because the first time I went was Queen's Park, Partick Thistle actually, when they get absolutely hammered in the playoffs. We all thought this would be a cracking Friday night. It was a great game. Dom scored the last minute goal the week before. This would be brilliant, and awful. But then actually being in the away end this time was quite fun. And then was Nathan Austin with the jammiest last minute equaliser you'll ever see. That was brilliant. And then I'll try to figure out why, is it the Norway stand or something? I had to look that one up. They've got a Norway supporters club or something? Or they That's bizarre, isn't it? But coming into this role, of course, we've spoken about this facility and just everything you've got at your disposal. But when you first came in here, you must have been absolutely licking your lips at this, considering as well that was at the time where, and I know things have changed behind the scenes and we won't really get into that, but with the funding, with this facility, with the players at your disposal who had all of that as well, you must have been thinking, this is the bollocks, this one, isn't it?
I think when I first came in as obviously the B team coach, it was a bit it was an eye opener, because again, obviously I was still a player at Dumbarton, and had to kind of leave the kind of playing side of things, because this was kind of too big to kind of turn down for me, or too good to turn down, and it was always the kind of route I wanted to go down. But again, I had a successful time at Hamilton, and coming in here, as I said, it was a kind of eye opener in terms of what we had. Listen, we've obviously got rid of a lot of stuff, etc. since that time, but I've said this facility for a championship club is unbelievable, and do you know what I mean? We get very good work done. Our grass pitches are actually getting done just now, and again they're nearly ready. I think end of October they could be ready, but again the facilities and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? It's first class, and we get really good work done here, and as I mentioned already, I'm lucky for what we've got, and the players are lucky for what we've got as well. And I would say we've said to all of them since they come in the door, don't take this for granted, because it can quickly just go. And we do. I mean, as I said, I'm very methodical in the way that I want to work, and the players are working ever so hard behind the scenes. And I mentioned it earlier, the one thing that we have been is a very fit team. We're getting stronger. I mean, I do have a lot of young players, but we've spoke to sports science. We're trying to make sure that we're getting them bigger, stronger, quicker, more mobile, etc. And we are putting good work in. So no, in terms of the position that we're in, we are very fortunate, and we want to make sure that, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that this facility is still in the Championship next year. And if we continue on the route that we're in, then I'm sure we will be. But it's a very, very tough league. There is no kind of hiding place in terms of you will get punished. Do you know what I mean? I look at, again, probably Saturday for me is probably the most telling, because you do everything to work so hard. We had every answer for St Johnstone, but then that wee bit of quality right at the end of the game.
After the star man as well.
Exactly, and do you know what? He's absolutely flying, but that's what happens in this division. You get players like that, they can hurt you. And I don't think, again, I look at our kind of defensive side of the game on Saturday as well, as much as our attacking side and our good play. Their star players didn't have much of a kit until the moment that it matters. And that's what I'd obviously said to the team last night as well. Do you know what I mean? Again, there were certain ones in the Partick team that we probably kept quiet who have been quite good throughout this kind of start of the season. But ultimately, because Tony Watt's got good quality and his movement was good, and we don't deal with it, and again you get punished. So there's no margin for error, and it's something that we need to make sure that we take care of it. And I would like to see us going ahead, trying to go ahead in a game. Obviously, we have been in certain games as well, but because I do think we're a hard nut to crack.
Your first taste of this sort of role, or the closest thing to it, was when you and Stephen McLean were heading it up just for the end of the season there. Probably wasn't the most positive time for the club. Of course, I think Callum's departure came as a surprise to me. I think it came as a surprise to a number of the fans. Of course, it was just before a cup final as well, so you were very much flung into the deep end. Win a cup against a team that are now a Premiership side. What happened there? What was the kind of timeline of events? Like, not that I'm kind of flinging it on you guys. It was, and ultimately there was a fair bit of uncertainty around what was going on behind the scenes at the club as well. What really went on during that time?
Listen, I can't really comment in terms of what goes on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Because again, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's at the end of the day, I've been appointed to coach the team, and all that stuff will kind of take care of itself. But at that time, it was a very stressful time. As I said, I had my son 4 days before the cup final, so it was very much. You know what I mean? I had people going about, you get paternity and all that. In football, you don't get it. It's literally, do you know what I mean? I had my son on the Wednesday. I was back in here on the Thursday, and we're back at work trying to prepare for a cup final on the Sunday. But listen, that's football, and I knew that's what happens. Do you know what I mean? But again, seeing the cup final, we actually started the game well, and then we obviously got a couple of injuries, and again we don't react well to them scoring their goal, and again we had tough conversations after the game, and again, I don't think the results. I'd probably say the worst result for us as a whole would have been the Airdrie game when we get hammered 5-0. I really thought, because that was a kind of a telling sign that we were really low. But then we managed to obviously pick up a couple of results towards the end, and ultimately, again, like we ended up staying up, etc. But I just think that kind of Airdrie game was a really sore one for everybody. Do you know what I mean? Because we didn't lay a glove on them. And again, they were obviously a team where they were down the bottom fighting for their lives, and so were we. And I don't think we showed it enough that particular evening. But again, listen, I really enjoyed my time under Callum and Barry and Macca, and they were absolutely first class in here. Do you know what I mean? I'd never have a bad word to say about any of them. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Myself and Macca, we had a job to do. At the end of the day, the club decided it was going to be me and him, and we had a job to do, and we tried to do it to the best of our ability. And it never really worked out. And then it was when the club appointed me, it was right, let's go. I've got to try and make sure that I get the right people in the building. I've also got to make sure that I move on ones that I don't think are going to contribute, or ones that had to leave. Do you know what I mean? Again, because we had a lot of loans and we had a lot of circular players and stuff like that. I made 6 kind of signings in the summer. Obviously the guys that were here that I wanted to keep as well, and there was a massive turnover. But the one thing that I know that this group we've got this year is we're very, very hard working, and again, I don't think anybody could turn around and say that we're not. And I knew what I was bringing in, because I think a few people get surprised with some of my signings, but these guys have been absolutely brilliant for me since they've come in the building. And again, I think if anybody looking at our team, probably the guys that I did bring in have probably been our most consistent performers, so I'm really, really happy with my business. And then the guys that are, some of the ones that were here have just blended in nicely, so I do think we've got something really good going. But last year, listen, there's no hiding away from it. It was a difficult period, but as I said, me and Maka had a job to do, and ultimately it was when the club said to me, right, you're now in charge, then I had to just get on with it.
No. Was that an easy decision then? Because, I mean, not to beat around the bush or anything, I think there was definitely a mixed response to when you came in. I'm sure none of it was personal. I think ultimately the fans were hoping that when a guy like Callum Davison comes in, they're going to replace him with somebody like Callum Davison. Don't worry, I stuck by you the whole time, don't worry. And ultimately I think most of them are very much on side with you now. But then was that an easy decision though? Like you say, going from Dumbarton to here, it was too big to turn down? Or were you actually just told, nah, you're in charge now, is that it?
No, listen, when the club said to me about taking the job, I was never ever going to turn it down. Do you know what I mean? And as I mentioned, I was surprised when Callum went. That's just, do you know what I mean? That's the way football works. But again, I had messages for Callum, I had messages for the staff, etc., saying wish me all the best. But that is football, do you know what I mean? It's a ruthless environment that we're in, and I was under no illusion that I know that people out with, listen, Callum Davison's a well recognised manager, do you know what I mean? And right now, I was a kind of nobody. I'd kind of come through that stage of being a youth coach, etc., but I knew that I had the belief to make sure that I could do a good job. And as I mentioned already, that I've had so many people paying me kind of compliments, paying our team compliments, paying our staff compliments. So, and again, long may that continue, but I wouldn't shy away from it and say that, was there a surprise? There was a surprise. Of course there was. But ultimately I'm in charge now, and everybody needs to just get on with it, because, and as I said to you already, I think from my point of view, I'm ready for it, and I've proven that I think I can definitely do a good job. And listen, as I mentioned earlier, I've got my own stepping stones, I've got my own journey now, do you know what I mean? My motivation's my boy. Aye. And I'm thinking, right, how am I going to give him the best life I can? And football's all I know, as I mentioned earlier on, so I need to make sure that I give it everything that I've got to make sure that he has a good life, and obviously my family have a good life, and football will do that for me, no doubt. But again, I understand how ruthless it can be, just like we saw. That's just the way it is, do you know what I mean? But I'm under no illusion, because I've been involved in it for so long. So, but no, I was never ever going to say no, because I seen what was here, I seen what we could build, and I thought, aye, let's go for it.
Might as well, we speak about it being ruthless. The business of football in itself is ruthless. The guys you've brought in, a good number of them have really hit the ground running, as we've mentioned before. Do you think they'll be easy to lock? I know there's never really a long term at this level of football. I know ultimately the turnover is quick, because there are much bigger fish even in this division. But guys like Josh, who has taken the league by storm, do you think, is it easy to keep guys locked down, or are you a bit maybe already looking at, I'm not saying like give us the blueprint or who's on the shortlist or anything, or are you already looking ahead to not replacements but the natural succession, if you know what I mean?
I don't think we can, if I'm being completely honest, because again, I don't know what situation we're going to be in.
Yeah. And ultimately they're all still Queen's Park players as
well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, nobody's bigger than Queen's Park. We're giving players opportunity. Do you know what I mean? As much as Josh is flying, we gave him an opportunity at Queen's Park, and he's took his opportunity. Do you know what I mean? And listen, every football player's got their own selfish, I wouldn't say selfish, but at the end of the day, it's a selfish sport. Yeah. As much as it's a team environment, and
especially for a striker.
Absolutely, aye. And do you know what? And I want Josh to be selfish, because that's his role, is to put the ball in the net, and by the way, he's hungry to score goals. Do you know what I mean? And I would never ever try and take that away from him. It's like what I say to our wingers, like if you're a winger, your job is to try and beat your man and put a cross in, or beat your man and score, or your job's not to turn back and get the ball back to the defenders and you do that bit. No, and that's
save that for the Premiership football.
well, listen, I'm very much a believer in you need to give players belief. If I was to turn into young Tamam Scott or Tyrese McDonald or all these ones that are on the wings, etc., and say, when you get doubled up on, just turn back. No, because they've got to show what they've got. They've got to be brave, and as I mentioned earlier, we want to produce young players. We have got a young squad, but that's what we've got. Do you know what I mean? And we need to try and help them along this journey. But no, listen, I think from my point of view, they just need to keep doing what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? I think, and then we'll review it. That's all you can do, because I don't know what my situation is going to be. The staff don't know what their situation is going to be. We don't know the players. I'm hoping that we do get something in place. Do you know what I mean? Because we are building something, and I think if we can certainly, kind of, as I said to you, with the championship, if we can keep ourselves in the championship, then it's about building blocks. It's about building. We've managed to bring in good players. Can we build on that? Listen, if a player goes, a player goes. Do you know what I mean? That's the nature of football. As I said, that people need to try and better their career. You would never ever hold somebody back. You need to do it in the right way. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, as I said, like we've got a job to do, but we've also given players opportunity to succeed by the way of their playing. Yeah. Also, our style of play. How does it help them? Players that are around about them. How does it help them? Again, I've mentioned this over the kind of piece. If somebody gets in team of the week, if somebody gets a personal achievement, it's not just down to them. Do you know what I mean? It's down to everybody. So, and that's what I wanted to try and create. It's not about me. It's about Queen's Park, and it's about you competing for your spot for Queen's Park. And I do think, as I said already, I think the fans, I think the people at the club, myself included, the staff included, we all see that the group are working ever so hard to make sure that we get results on the pitch, to make sure this club is a championship club next year. I said when I get the job, it wasn't just about survival for me. I wanted to build something. Listen, I would never ever say, I'd never come out and say what our kind of goal is, because we know our in-house goals this season, what we want to achieve. We have quarterly reviews and we look at things, and again I'll be looking at it after this week as well. But for me, it's not about just survival, it's about how, and I think we've shown that we can compete, but you need to continue that, because it's only the start. And I mean, we're only getting into our 9th game of the season, so, and as I mentioned already, it's about getting that kind of consistent base. But I don't know where we're going to be, so I can't, until we know that, then we just need to make sure we're doing our job.
We will start to wind this down, Sean. I know you're absolutely buzzing to get to that match review for last night.
I'm not so sure.
That's alright, I'll keep this going then. But I do want to ask about Darren O'Donnell. Ultimately, that was a big departure that was announced that long ago, was it? Or did he leave at the end of the transfer window? Was that the kind of time?
Yeah, just after. Listen, I'm in regular contact with Darren, so aye.
Yeah, aye. I know at times, especially with the fans, he maybe wasn't the most popular character, but within these walls he was very much the director of football. How much help and support the team maybe give from that side of things, more the kind of management side of contracts, negotiations to you then? Because I did read that he had been helping you with that.
Darren is massive for me. Listen, and I wouldn't shy away from saying it. Do you know what I mean? He's away now, but again, as I mentioned, I have regular contact with Darren. I would probably say he's a good friend now, after everything that he's done for me and putting, obviously, the kind of building blocks for me in place. Do you know what I mean? He was director of football before he left, and I mentioned already the 6 signings that I brought in was also down to him, to make sure that the negotiations were done properly. He'd done a lot of work for me, so listen, I've got nothing but total respect for what Darren did for me as the kind of director of football. And listen, a lot of the stuff that we do here wouldn't be in place if it wasn't for him, and obviously Willie and all these people at the club. Do you know what I mean? It's, if you look at our facility, which you've already seen and you go on about it, do you know what I mean? It's first class, but it's only down to these people. And then again, as I said, I think the club itself, lesser hand in here, the facilities, the kind of, you're not going to get any better. No. You really aren't. So no, these people have put a lot of work in, and then it's about us on the pitch doing the other work. Do you know what I mean? But no, listen, Darren was absolutely brilliant for me, and still is to this stage. You know what I mean? He's a good sounding board as well. So no, aye.
No complaints,
No
regrets.
No.
But as I like to sort of ask everybody at the end, ultimately, you talk about all the reviewing you do, and I mean, you're in here all the time, it never stops, as you said to me as we were coming through. But let's say we come right back here, hopefully not at 9 in the morning on a Wednesday, in a year's time, and I ask you, Sean, have you done a good job? Have you kind of met your goals? And you're like, aye, Charlie, I have. What is a good job done for you in a year's time, both here, personally, whatever it is for you?
I just think, as I keep mentioning, do you know what I mean? I need to make sure that we're a championship club next year. That is ultimately the goal for any club.
Yeah.
And where we finish will determine how successful we think we've been. As I said, we've got our in-house targets. Yeah. That's for me and the kind of the players and the staff to decide. Do you know what I mean? But we want to be successful. We want to have a successful team on the pitch. We want to make sure that we're, as I mentioned already, that we're working ever so hard to keep Queen's Park a championship club, because I think the kind of blueprint for Queen's Park wasn't probably to be in this position way back in terms of being in the championship right now.
Yeah, I think it's very much been, obviously Owen Coyle did a fantastic job, and that has accelerated everything.
Yeah, and do you know what? Listen, I remember playing against Queen's Park when they've been League 2, do you know what I mean? There's been a lot of changes. But we've got a job to do, and we need to make sure that we do that to the best of our ability, and that's definitely our goal, is to make sure that this club is still in the championship next year. As I mentioned, where that is in the division, then we've got our in-house targets. We've got something that we want to look towards. We want to surprise people, because again, I think we have been a kind of surprise package, because everybody writes you off. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, we get back to it. Myself probably getting in charge, people were a wee bit kind of like, oh, surprised. And listen, as I said, that doesn't bother me. Do you know what I mean? It really doesn't. It's
anything, I imagine it fuels you a wee bit. You've got that wee bit of a chip in your shoulder.
Listen, I wouldn't say a chip in my shoulder. I would say what I've got is a drive to succeed. Yeah. I've got a drive to do better than anything that I do. So, and then also ultimately, obviously we've got a very young team. We've got guys who have came for the, if you want to call it, lower leagues that have come in. But as I mentioned already, I knew what I was getting. I knew what they could offer me, and I think anybody that's been at our games, these players have excelled, and because I knew. Do you know what I mean? And ultimately, it will come down to me, because it's my decision making, my players who are bringing, my team to pick. And again, as I said, I think my decision making process throughout this has been reasonable so far, and again, I think last night I made a couple of tweaks to the team, and again, I always look at myself. I always say, did it work, did it not? But again, I think for me, I'll review it, which we've already mentioned, but ultimately I've got decisions to make. Do you know what I mean? And that there's always reasons why, and that's why I always say to players, if I take you out the team, if I put you back in the team, if I need to play this way or I need to play this system, etc., it's not personal. It never is personal. It's about the best that I think we can do for the team. So that's my job. Do you know what I mean? That's the decision making process I've got to make. So no, listen, as I mentioned, I've been happy so far, and we just need to continue our good work.
Well, if there still is any sort of surprise package about you, I think this however long we've been yapping on for might convince maybe just a few more guys that were on the fence about you. I think very much here sort of just wanting to play football. That is quite a Queen's Park type mentality, isn't it? They're play for the sake of the game. You very much wax lyrical about all your values and that. I don't think anybody can have any complaints about that, Sean. Thanks very much, mate.
No problem, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.